Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Alex Oliveira. Apologies, get your name right for a start. So, hello, Alex. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Pete. Nice to be here.
Listen, great to have you on, Alex. So it's fascinating. So, where are you calling us from today, Alex?
Palm Bay, Florida. That's just outside of Orlando.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's going to be a whole lot nicer than here in wet and rainy Ireland. But we all have our problems, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. In the summer, we're like, oh, it's too hot. And then, it gets in a nice time of the year, like right now. But even though it's like in the, I think today's in the 60s here. And then we say, oh, well, you can't go to the pool. So like you said, it's always greener on the other side.
First world problems, eh? So, Alex, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, who am I? Well, first and foremost, I'm a native of Brazil. So I was born in Brazil, came to the US in 88. At the time I was 10 years old. So been here in the US for over 30 years, and yeah, I mean, my journey here from Brazil to the US is like a lot of immigrants in any country. My family, they came for a better life, and luckily I found the right girl in college. She was my next door neighbor, my wife Erin, and we got married, had 4 kids, and so we live here and we homeschool the 4 kids and we RV. And my business is more, I've got a couple different businesses, but the main business is a lifestyle business in the sense that I take on clients that I know I can service. It's no longer about, let me take on clients that I have to be tied to the office for. And because for me, it's the homeschooling is important and the traveling with the kids is important. So, but it took me time to get there. I tell people that didn't happen overnight. I mean, it took 20 years of really lots of failures and hard work to get to the point where I earned the right to do that, and I used to look at other people that had that kind of life. And I said, man, how do you get there? So I'm here and I really have nothing to complain about. I have a lot of good people around me between my team, my family, friends, people like that. So, during these days with COVID and everything that's going on, you have to be sensitive because not everybody has been, has gone unscathed. I mean, we've lost a few friends, lots of family members who had COVID, but beat it. So I'm sensitive to it every day, that everything that I do, it's a privilege, it's a real blessing, some luck, and it's not all just my doing, so, well, that's Alex in a nutshell. Yeah.
What season of your life are you in?
Oh, what season? For me, it's a real happy. I think of just happy and fun right now, which kind of gets to the point. Wow, if some of my clients listen to this, they'll say, wait a minute, Alex, are you not working hard on our accounts? Well, no, I have employees who do that. So I tell clients, I'm making no secret that I'm not looking to work day and night. I've done that. I've earned it. That's why I have employees all over the world to do that, but really good people. Who could take care of their accounts. I pay them well. And I'm in that season where I am leveraging all the hard work, all the equity and saving, investment, all of that, so that I can have fun with the kids now. And I could be there to grow with them. And it just gives me great joy to do that. So it's worked out, but that to me is like the main thing, is just have fun, be happy. And if I were doing what I was doing 10 years ago in that season, where I was like building it, working 100-hour work weeks, that was fun too. Don't get me wrong. I was telling you before we got on the podcast about my serial conference going days. Loved it. Traveling and meeting people. That was that chapter in life. But now I'm in this chapter where I'm definitely not anywhere near retirement. I can't ever see myself retiring. I love working, but I like the balance of both. I like, some weeks to take off for a week and go out to camping and then come back and work hard. And I couldn't do that if I had a really just traditional business model where I had to be there you know, 48, 50 weeks out of the year. And so yeah. So hopefully that we can keep going through this and the businesses keep growing. Certainly during COVID, some of the businesses dipped, others went up, which is weird. And, I feel very, very lucky.
So what would be your main line of your business, would you say? I mean, what's your specialty, if you like?
Yeah, my superpower is lead generation, which I tell the kids all the time. I watch Marvel movies with my son, my 11-year-old, on Saturday nights. That's our thing, and I always joke with him like my superpower is lead generation. So exciting, right, son? It's like, not really, like just lead generation. Yeah, well, listen, I find ways to compel people to click and buy. That's what I do. Whether it's a product, service, B2B, B2C, whatever industry. I love figuring out how I can help businesses grow. And while that might not be exciting for some people, it's very exciting for me because I know I can have a hand in just seeing a client go from 5 million to 10 to 20 million in revenue. And I have clients that have been with us for more than 7 years, which speaks volumes in my industry where most are fly by night. So the service we offer is that, when people are looking for branding or digital marketing or the run of the mill SEO, social media, that's not what we do. But like if you have a sales team and you want to grow your business, that's what we do. We help drive that traffic and help you grow. So that's my superpower. But like most entrepreneurs, I fancy myself, a bunch of different things, and which is partly why I have to own my business, because I have that shiny object syndrome where some weeks I get it in my head that I'm going to pursue this and I do it. And, I couldn't do that if I worked for a corporation. So again, but it's like I tell my kids, I tell the kids that, look, if for whatever reason the businesses went downhill, it's happened in the past, certainly 2008 here in the US, 2009, I could tell you, I mean, it kicked my ass, both myself, my wife, and the employees. The business went downhill very quickly in that financial crisis. So for those 2 following years, I went and worked for corporations, so I'm not that entrepreneur that's like, oh, I can't work for somebody else. Yes, I can. And when I do, I bust my butt. Right. But what do I prefer to do? I prefer to work for myself and have that additional responsibility, but the bigger rewards that come with it, So, yeah, but so for long-winded answer, it's really, I help companies grow. Like if you want your company to grow, I can help you generate leads.
Well, tell me, what does fire in the belly mean to you, Alex?
Yeah, fire in the belly for me is waking up and often not going to sleep because you got it just doesn't go away, right? You could be trying to watch a movie, even out with the kids, and my wife says it sometimes. I can tell when you're not there, like because, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you're right? I just can't stop thinking about this one thing, and it's different all the time, whatever it is, but it always comes back to business. And I'm very passionate about my clients' businesses. And sometimes, yes, on a Saturday night, eating dinner, I start thinking about how I can better it. And it just does. I got to go fix it. I got to go help them do it. I got to reach out to an employee, as I did even during Thanksgiving here in the US recently. I was reaching out, texting clients, texting employees, and how's this one? Send me this report, do that, because I'm in it. I want to see it. I want to see their growth come to fruition. And so, and again, it's not always fun. I think that's what the big thing I tell my son is, just don't mistake the passion, that fire in the belly, for something that only gives you joy. I'm very well aware that it comes with some challenges too, but I'm okay with those challenges, but as far as like the thing that keeps me awake at night, which usually here in the US, that question is framed in a way that is like in a bad way. Like, what keeps you up at night is the fires. So that's not good. And I said, well, that to me, I could flip it and say, well, what keeps me up at night are the things that excite me, and sometimes they are challenges. and that's okay too, but I think you have to be that like I tell my son, nobody's waking me up when I wake up at 5 and I'm like fired up and I got to go do something as simple as write a blog post about something that I can't get out of my mind. I got to let the world know. I don't care if 10 people or 100 people click on it. It's just part of the work that I do, that I create. There's this whole plethora of things. And I like doing it that way because in my industry, it's often only do the things that can be monetized. And it just doesn't do it for me. If I only did the things that I could monetize it, I would be very bored very quickly. It would be clickbait. It would be a very like mechanical thing, which I don't care for that, And so I have to be careful of what accounts I bring on, because some clients, some companies, that is what they want. They're like, we don't care that you're excited about law or about, a car dealership, whatever their business is. Great that you're excited about that and serving the client and creating content to drive traffic and leads. But what we want is just to sell. So just do whatever sells, So yeah, so I think, that your question about fire in the belly is just being excited and being lit up and not being sometimes able to go to sleep, and certainly wanting to get up every day and do it, And if I know when I'm doing something that's not giving me fire in the belly, because I tend to make excuses in my head. Why? Yeah, I could put that in the back burner or pass it off to somebody else. Then I kind of know, like, it's just not going to be my thing. And sometimes it could be a client account. Don't get me wrong. I'm not excited about every account or business opportunity that comes across my desk, but I know who to give it to, because that person definitely has to be excited about it. I'll give you an example. Leather gloves. And not too long ago, I had a client who sells, fancy high-end leather gloves. I mean, I just couldn't get excited about an e-commerce seller of leather gloves, but I know who could. One of my guys who does pay-per-click, and that's what he does. He's great at pay-per-click, driving traffic for e-commerce. Not necessarily excited about the gloves, but he gets excited about seeing that conversion in the business, right? And seeing a report go up like a hockey stick effect based on his understanding of algorithms and all of that. And that's great. You take this account because that excites you. So I think that's being honest with yourself and knowing that not every opportunity is going to give you fire in the belly, even if it is in the realm of the things that you love and are good at doing. So that has always worked for me,
Do you think we all have fire in the belly?
No. And if some, for the people that I'm judging here, because you can't say someone doesn't have it, but some people just have a weird way of showing it. And maybe it's because they're introverted. And that's, I don't want to, I don't want to judge someone because they're introverted. I have, family members, people who are, they're just not, that's not their thing. They don't show it externally. And if you get to know them internally, if you press the right buttons, boom, they're like, yeah, they're excited. But it's still compared to, what I would think a very colorful fire in the belly person is still very like muted. So I think this is just my sort of theory in it, is that it's not because someone is introverted or not introverted, because I've certainly met many extroverts who are very social, who, whether it's their work or something else, you're like, you could tell they're not super excited about it. And so maybe they just haven't discovered what excites them to that level, to the level where you could get lost in it. And you could say, man, if I got, lost in an island, like Gilligan's Island, I could do that. Even though there'd be no need for it, I would still do it, because I'd be in an island. So like, who the hell's going to need lead generation? I probably would still be sketching workflows and funnels, because it excites me. And I think about the sales and the commerce, and thinking back when I was a kid working at the flea market with my parents, commerce, just the whole thing. In Brazil, in a big city like Sao Paulo, we'd walk and we'd see people selling on the streets. Like if you go to this day, you go to Rio or Sao Paulo, and you're on a highway, when the traffic comes to a stop, you've got these kids wearing no shirts. They're just in flip flops, and they got their bags and coolers with water and nuts. They go up to your car and they'll put the water or the chips or whatever it is on your mirror, right on the mirror. And they'll do that for like 30, 40 cars. And then so they'll do it from front to back. So let's say there's 20, 30 cars. And then they start to come back from the last one to the first one. And what they're hoping is you'll open the window and go, yep, I want the water. And you pay them right there. And they're just selling one after another. It's a very unique way of selling. And the ones that are in the streets, like in the alleys, they're called camelos, and they go to door selling. They set up wherever they can set up. To me, it was always exciting the way the guy who sharpens knives and scissors would come around our town, right? He'd come in his bicycle. Man, this guy was so excited about sharpening your freaking scissors and knives. Really excited. I'm like, you love what you're doing, man. That's amazing. And I got that bug early on, just seeing the way people moved around, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but almost like gypsies. And there was this like magical thing. And then you're trading, commerce, money, you feed everybody, you feed your family, you're able to build wealth. And you take that from like a very small, like micro level to like a bigger level. That's your gateway, man. That's your gateway to be able to dictate how you go about life every day. That's exciting to me. And I'm not sure everybody has it, because maybe they haven't found it or haven't tried it. Maybe they're fearful. And so it's easier to just do what the mainstream tells you to do, or maybe it's just comfort too. There is that too. I mean, there's a certain level of comfort with not dealing with things that give you fire in the belly. True?
Absolutely.
But if you're like, hey man, I tell my kids all the time that too. It's like, anything that is anything that's going to give you big rewards, like explosive, that will be like major chapters in your life, man, it takes a lot of work, a shitload of work. And I think for that, it takes the fire in the belly. And then if you don't have the fire in the belly to do those things, then I think I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but for myself, I know when I haven't had it, and it's boring as hell. And it doesn't give me the results either. So that's the other thing. I think there's a correlation for me between boredom and not capitalizing both monetarily, but also from experiences. So if I'm doing something that is just mundane, I tend to see that I don't make money from it, and I don't get the skills that I enjoy in the everyday business that I run. So, yeah.
Tell me, out of interest, are you typically pain driven or pleasure driven?
Wow, that's a deep one right there. Pain driven. I think I am. And it's like I can make a case for both, but I think it's mostly pain. I mean, not mostly, more pain than pleasure. Because what I find myself, Peter, doing is that even when you could land a big account, make a real estate transaction where everything was great. Yeah, it's the win. Cool. I don't need a pat on the back. I don't even like a pat on the back. Please. It's like, I just, that's never been my thing. Right. Like it may actually makes me feel uncomfortable, right? When someone is, oh, you're doing this so great. You're like, okay, let's move on. Like, just, there's no need, which I think is the question that you're asking is about that. So I tend to see that when there are things that most people get pleasure out of, like, oh my God, I made a bunch of money, or, oh my God, I'm, I don't know, whatever, I'm like, oh, wonderful. But the things that are hard in life that I had to go through a lot of challenges to navigate through that path and hit a dead end. Oh, come back, go again. Those are the things that for me just get me like fired up. So I've never thought of that before, but I think it is more pain than pleasure, you know? And I think it also gets to the idea that when it is more pain and pleasure, it tends to benefit other people. It's bigger than me, more than when it's just pleasure driven, you know, like trading, you know, talking about cryptocurrency and stuff. I mean, like, oh, great. Like, I don't know. I get friends that get really fired up about crypto. Oh my God, I just made a bunch of money. I'm like, well, first of all, it's phantom, but that's okay. I play in that world, and I love the idea, the concept of, you know, decentralized monetary systems. That's great. I hope it happens. But right now, everything's just backed up by, you know, thin air. Nevertheless, it's supply demand. It's, you know, it's gambling in a lot of ways, right? But that's okay. But I'll tell you what, through this crypto boom in the last 5-6 years, there have been times that I've made more money in a matter of minutes or days than early in my career I might have made in a year, Pete. And you go, oh, I bet you were excited, right? No, like, whatever, man. This is just, I mean, like, I get I like the what's behind it. Like, someone built the rig, someone wrote the code, right? They created it on the blockchain, they unpack it. Okay, you put it in the market, supply, demand. Okay, cool. But I mean, what did you do for the world? What the hell? Like, what did you do other than waste a bunch of energy on the cloud? Because we need more of that, right? Like more energy consumption for things that have no value. So, you know, and not that you have to be altruistic in everything that you do, but I think that there is something to be said for this wave of millennials and Gen Z who these new generations who are more socially driven in everything that they do, which we're seeing here in the US and around the globe, the great resignation, right? I have clients who ask me, oh my God, I can't find people to work for me. I'm like, well, they have to love what they're doing. And I think COVID did that for a lot of people. It made them think about, like, what do I want out of life? Because you're not going to be here forever. So how are you going to run your life? You're going to let somebody else run it for you? That's fine. You could do that. Are you going to, is what excites you going to be making $1,000 on crypto in a minute? I don't know. How does that change the world? It doesn't, but you could go buy more stuff, as if we needed more stuff, you know? And yeah, so, but I think that whole the question about pleasure and pain gets back to all of that, you know, in that I think I have to, it always has to be bigger than me. And maybe there is a part of me that feels like responsible because I came from nothing. My family and I came from nothing in Brazil. They came from the north of Brazil to the south, to Sao Paulo. So generations there. And so maybe there is a pattern where, as I climb this ladder, so to speak, in life, where I have more control, not necessarily wealth, because you could lose that overnight. So focus on family first, because even if you don't have the big house and the car and the vacations, if you have each other, then it doesn't really matter. But maybe there's something to that in which is, I came to this country with nothing, my family and I, and we made something of it. And now I mostly consciously, try to do things that benefit me and others. And I don't need to do that in the public eye, you know, mostly it's in the background, but that's what excites me, you know, because then, you know, you're making a difference in somebody's life. And I think it is those things. I mean, I'm remembering a time we were in New York City, my wife and I, and the 2 kids. At the time, we just had 2, and we're right around Times Square. It's about like 5-6 o'clock. and it just starts pouring. So everybody's kind of going under the awnings in front of stores. And we're sitting there with the stroller, and this homeless man walks by with a couple bags, and one of his bags broke, right? So it's broken. All his stuff, food, whatever, all over the sidewalk. And I mean, you're in Times Square, so there's like literally thousands of people right there that could do something. And without even a second to measure, my wife was there, right? She's like, boom. Didn't matter that this guy was homeless and was a stranger. I didn't say anything. I had the kids here, and within like a second, she was there helping them. Boom, helping the guy grab all his stuff and put it in another bag. And I always tell my kids that story because they don't really remember. They were little. I said, because it's to show you that's humanity, man. Like she wasn't doing that for herself. She's just doing that because here's someone in need. And I think that we all have those moments and those opportunities all day, every day in life as to how you can help someone. We just had this conversation the other day, my wife and I said, and I feel like some people get pleasure out of seeing other people happy. And then there's a whole other segment of the world's population that gets zero pleasure of seeing people happy. They're like, actually, I don't give a shit. I'm only happy if I'm happy. Like if I'm full, my belly is full. Wonderful. I've done my job. And I'll call them selfish, call them whatever you want to call them. It's pretty obvious, like around the globe on the right and the left, who's what, in my opinion. But again, I work with a lot of nonprofits. I was telling you that before. I've worked with over 100 nonprofits in the last 20 years in multiple capacities. And that's a lot of time. I'm pretty sure if I estimate, I've probably put, 5,000 hours and given a lot of money to nonprofits. Why do you do that? Like, what? I mean, I get people that ask me that, friends. It's so weird, man. Like you give your time, you mentor, you do this, you do that. I'm not doing it to publicize it, to get more business or get a pat on the back, because most of this stuff happens in the background, right? And I think that's the case for most people that I know who are givers, whether it's at their church or in the community. They're not doing it for anybody else. It definitely gives you a fire in the belly, so to speak, but you're not doing it because you're saying, hey world, hey, look at me, I'm here, I'm helping. That's what corporations do. But yeah, I mean, I think some of the questions that you're asking are really good. I haven't thought of these things in a long time. So as I told you before, I might ramble on for a while, Pete. So
that's what it's all about, really. I'm curious for you. I mean, is it, and I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Is it the chase or the kill for you?
It's the chase. Oh, totally. Yeah, it's the journey. And to that point, sometimes, you get to, my wife actually says that. She's like, I would bet that you could climb Mount Everest and you'd get to the top. And instead of enjoying it like people do and taking a selfie and then like telling the world, I'm here, you probably would look at a bird and like fall off the cliff because the shiny object, you're on to the next thing. And I don't dwell on I really don't. I don't want to dwell on my wins. Partly, I don't want to dwell on my wins, on the kills, so to speak, is because, great, I got there, move on. Like, hey, congratulations. Okay, great. Whatever it was, whether it was a milestone or if we're talking business, monetary, obviously it's great. You reached that goal. Now let's go on for the next one, because it's the journey there that matters. So absolutely the chase.
Yeah, I could I kind of predicted that, I think. And I mean, well, tell me, just out of interest, I mean, what was your first memory of either a job or earning money, as such, exchanging time or service for money?
Yeah, that's one of my most exciting stories that I keep in my pocket. I try to tell my clients who I said, they have websites, they're selling, they have stores, any size. I'm like, teach your workforce to tell their stories. They're good stories, not bullshit stories, good stories about their life. Because that's what people do. We connect with people. That's why social media is so good, even though it has its bullshit side of the facade, but mostly people like it because you connect with people. And when you're vulnerable and you let them know, that's how it works, which this whole podcast thing that we're doing here is all about that. Right. And so, but this story is one of my favorites, definitely in my journey here on earth, which was 11 years old. I'm in fourth grade and still, I mean, I know maybe 10 words in English, maybe 10. I don't know much. And, but I wanted to get a bike. And, my parents work in a bunch of jobs. They don't have money for a bike, man. And, I'm thinking like, I should ask Tony, my dad's friend, who my dad worked at his restaurant at night, cleaning, doing everything. I should ask Tony, would he give me a job? Just like, you're a kid. He was like, whatever. So Tony comes over one day. I say, hey, Tony, do you have a job? It's like, what, do I have a job? No, not for kids. You're 11 years old. I said, no, I mean, I'll work, And in those days, late 80s, like you could, a kid wouldn't be anything for a kid to work the papers or this. Now, kids get like a cookie if they work by the time they're 18, and that's usually around the globe anyways. But I said, yeah, I want a job because I want to save up for a bike. I want to make money. He says, well, all right, let's see what you got. Come into the restaurant. There's an Italian fine dining Italian restaurant called La Grota in Delray Beach, Florida. So I go there after school. He says, okay, great. You got to buy a tuxedo shirt because it's fine dining. So tuxedo shirt, black pants, black shoes, yada, yada, bow tie. I said, okay. I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to be a waiter, but I don't even speak English. And so I told my parents he's going to pay me $3 an hour, $3 an hour. And that's big money for me, So I tell my parents, we got to go buy the shirt. We buy it. I come back and he's like, you'll work weekends and a couple of days during the week because I don't want to have a problem with your parents telling me that you're working after school and this. I said, well, I want to work as much as you give me, I want to make money. So I get to the job and it's funny because the thing, Pete, that fascinated me the most at that time, this is how you never know the young mind, what makes kids tick is so different than adults, right? The most exciting part of that job, other than the money that I was going to make, Pete, was the fact that I was going to clock in a card, clock. Like when you get to the job, you clock it in. Oh man, I used to see people do that and go, that is really cool. Like, okay. So I got to do that, So I got first day on the job was like a weekend, real busy, the restaurant. At that time, you remember everybody used to smoke inside. The place looked like a cloud. Everybody smoked inside. And I'm in there and I said, oh, so, I have to learn the menu, right? He says, menu? No, you couldn't be a waiter. You barely speak English, kid. Come on. I said, oh, what am I going to do? He's like, you're a busboy. You take out all the dishes, the dirty dishes when they leave. You take it to the dishwasher and you bring dessert or whatever the waiters tell you to bring. If they need an ashtray, they need an ashtray. Need a dessert, you do all the bitch work. He didn't say it that way, but I now know that that's what it was. And I'm like, oh, wow, that doesn't really look that, enticing. Because I saw the other dishwasher spend so much time in the back taking the dishes and moving stuff. And I'm like, ooh, that sounded like some dirty work, man. But all right, I'm going to do it. And I did it. I did it for like 6 months. And that really was my first job. And I saved up the money. I worked New Year's Eve and I'd get tips. I get tons of tips, dollars, crumbled up dollars. And I get home and I have $20 of crumbled up, because the waiters here in the US, they'll share it with the busboy. I was super excited, man. I got to buy my own bike with my own money. I used to love going to work. Like I said, learned a lot. I remember a time the waiter got mad at me upset with me because the customer was asking for an ashtray. And I didn't know that word ashtray is always in my head because I didn't know what an ashtray was. I thought she was asking for dessert. So she's asking me for an ashtray. I go in the back and bring her a tiramisu. And I say, hey, here's your dessert, dessert. And she's like, no, ashtray. And I'm like, oh man. So I go back and get an apple pie. I'm not kidding. And by the third time I'm coming back, and she's waving down the waiter and she's talking to him. I don't know what they're saying. He comes back because he spoke Portuguese. And he says, kid, she's asking for an ashtray, man. Why do you keep bringing her dessert? I said, oh, man, I felt so embarrassed. You know, when you feel that like heat. And I'm like, what an idiot, man. And yeah, so needless to say, I learned English and here I am. But that is my earliest memory of working and making my own money.
It's fabulous, isn't it? What a beautiful way to start, you know. And for you, I mean, it's interesting. Can you take praise? Are you good at taking a compliment?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, yes. I would say who doesn't like a good compliment if it's real, right? You know, I was talking to a sales pro earlier today. He trains people, and I'm trying to connect him with some of my clients. And you know, like he's saying, it doesn't work anymore, Alex, in business. Salespeople who bullshit people, you know, and it's either you're the real deal or you're not, especially with like high end sales and B2B enterprise. You know, he's like, people have to be authentic, you know. And so for me, if it's authentic, I'm with it. Great. Thank you for the compliment. But if you don't really know me and you come at me, oh my God, you're an entrepreneur and you're doing so great, it's like, you know, it doesn't mean anything, you know. But it is something that I tell my kids too. I said, like, don't dwell on those compliments, like, you know, because sometimes people could be blowing smoke up your ass, even if it's authentic, but they're trying to get an angle on you. So if you're complimenting me to death, I'm out, because you probably you've got ulterior motives. Who the hell, you know? There's those people who like compliment you on everything. Oh my God, your shoes are great. You're like, what do you want? What do you want? So yeah, and a nice compliment is always good, but you know, I think, like I said, that's not what makes me move, you know.
Tell us what did your 11-year-old self learn then that you still have with you now?
Um, I mean, I think it's like the true meaning of hard work, which I definitely learned from both my mom and dad, of course, a lot of family members, but um, just that, listen, man, you don't have to worry about who else is doing what. You just do you. And I think that really helped me in a lot of situations that I was in, where someone might have not been lifting their weight and I was lifting mine, and that's okay. I'm just going to keep on moving, because that's how I roll. I'm not going to compare my standards to yours. Yours is probably way lower than mine. That's just because that's my competitive side anyways, right? So to me, I'm always, even at that age, my dad would say, like, listen, you don't worry about whoever's doing what as far as work goes. You go as hard as you can, work your ass off, and forget this like idea of like work smart, not hard. What are you talking about? Like, the physical and the mental, we're one. It's not like I can separate myself, you know. Just because somebody works a computer job doesn't mean they're not busting their ass. Right? Like, I'm just saying, people usually think of working hard as like lifting. Listen, I do my own lawn. I mow my own lawn. You know, why you mow your own lawn? What's the matter with you? I used to have a service that used to come and mow the lawn. But I got to tell you, Pete, it gives me great joy to mow my lawn. Everything about it, the sweating, and I feel like a man, right? Like, yeah. And I don't even have a self-propelled one. This is like an old school one. You better push it, man. But I love the smell of it. I feel like I'm in touch with nature. When I'm done, I crack a beer. Oh, it feels so good, you know? And so, yeah, that desire to always work hard and never worry about what other people are doing. So that means that if something is broken, whether it's in my house or anywhere else, and I see it and I can fix it or pick it up, then I pick it up. I'm not going to wait for the next person to do it. We're trying to pass that on to the kids too, right? Like, a couple of weeks ago, I came out of the bathroom and I said, "Oh, there's this little plastic piece of a toy, a hammer." I said to my wife, what is this? As I've walked by this bathroom, I've seen this there for like 3-4 days. It's a little piece of plastic. And she said, yes, I was testing. I was testing the kids, all the three big ones. They've all gone in there, used the bathroom over the last 3-4 days, and no one's picked it up. And that's the first day you're in there and you picked it up. And I said, oh, so anyway, so that was a great life lesson, right? Now we're gonna yap them to death and talk about like, listen, you don't wait for the next person to get shit done. You get it done. You see something that is wrong, what as something as simple as that to something like the example I gave you of my wife helping somebody in need, you do it. You don't wait. And I said, and you know what? And that's the type of person that, and they probably hear me say this on a weekly basis. So if the ship is going down, what kind of a person do you want to be in that ship? And what kind of a person do you want to be? The guy who you're like, yeah, that guy's going to jump and leave everybody or push everybody out of the ship? Or do you want to be the guy that, or the person, in my daughter's case, the person who everyone is like, yes, that's the person I want in my ship, because if it goes down, they're going to take care of it. Right. And they're not only looking out for themselves, they're looking out for everybody, so.
Yeah, it's what's your values then? I mean, do you have core values or soul values?
I do, absolutely. There are some things that I think are principles to live by, certainly integrity, integrity, which I think it just gets at your everything from your honesty and it cuts both ways. When I say values, it's not just my own, is, the values that I think of when I meet people. Like if they don't have those values, if I can't trust you, probably you don't have integrity, and things like that. Uh, and then there are other values that I think are less are they're not make or break it. It's like a secondary, like you have a primary set of values, and then you have a kind of secondary, like, it's okay, because we're all human, we're going to make mistakes. And so I often think to myself, man, I wonder, how many times in life I've broken somebody else's values, and then they maybe they ghosted me. And then I'm like, I wonder why Pete doesn't call me anymore. And then it's like, oh, I must have done something. I should ask him, but people usually don't tell you, and I think we're living in a very polarized world today with politics, nationalism, and the hate from different groups of people. And I think that gets at our values. I mean, you could say it's conspiracy theory and the weak buy into the media stuff, but not to me. To me, it's pretty much one bucket, whether it's business, friendships, neighbor, it's all the same. Like if your values are off from mine, sure, say hello, but we don't need to eat dinner together. Cause if you are someone who prescribes to racism, have a nice day, man. Like I have no interest in having friendships with people like that, and that's okay. And we could all live happy, and that's your set of values. But I think those are the things that you have to decide what you want in life. What kind of relationships and friendships do you want? And there are some that I think, like I said, equality. Like if you're not someone who thinks that everyone is equal, oh, we're probably not going to get along, and that's okay. If you're a client, I'm very open about those ideas or ideologies, and and if it's not a good fit for you, if I'm not a good fit for you as a friend, as a neighbor, or whatever, that's okay. We could all live separately. Like we don't need to have a million friends. I probably would still help you. Like, you had a flat tire or something, even if we had different politics or religion, I'm okay with that. We could still be respectful to one another, but I think, yeah, the question about values is one that I try not to judge people, because I've been there. So I've been there. I've been judged a lot. Whether it's you're a Latino in America, well, you must be here, um, you know, uh, riding the social welfare, and it's like, not really. I've employed thousands of you know Americans and citizens here, and I didn't come to this country to take anything. If anything, I came and I gave. I made and I gave, and I'm giving back. Um, So those are some of the things, Pete, when I think about like the values, and I try to be as open-minded as possible with people's values and their ideologies. It's just that sometimes, even with family members, like we were just at Thanksgiving, like there are some people in the family that say, "Oh my God, don't talk politics with them. Don't talk this or that." And it's like, man, are people so set in their ways that they're like, if you don't walk like me and look like me, it's not going to work. In my opinion, that's not a very healthy way to live. You know what I mean? Because I think in business it's the same. Like you have to have your customer's best interest in mind. It's not like you're like, I'm only going to serve people who do things exactly like me. You have to be a little bit more open-minded to it. It's just when I think about the closer circle, the inner circle, like who am I going to spend the vacations and the dinners with? Then at that point, I have to be more selective. So
No, absolutely. I mean, and what of those, or if any of them are more, would you ideally want to pass on to your four kids then?
yeah, the integrity. To me, the integrity is like, you know, there's so many aspects of integrity that I try to practice because I think it is one of those traits that are or mindsets or way of life that you have to be really careful, right? Like, so I think it starts one of the basic principles of my integrity is like, I gotta come through on my word. And my dad used to say that all the time. Like, you gotta be a man of your word. Like if you tell somebody you're gonna do something, you do it. Don't be that flaky son of a bitch who like tells people like, oh, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do that, whether it's in business or personal, and then you don't come through. And like we all know those types of people in our lives. We do. People who say they're, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, and they don't do it. And to me, even something as simple in business as if I say to Pete, I got this, you know, here's this customer who I think might be a great customer for you, and I'm going to connect you with them, Pete. So I'm going to come off this call right here today, and I'm going to connect you with them. All right, I'm going to connect you via email. Cool. And like a day, a week, 2, 3 weeks go by, and you're like, well, that's weird. Alex sold me on like, not that it's a big deal to you, but you're like, this guy. And then next time I say whatever again, I make a promise and I don't come through again. You start to see that pattern. That person just doesn't have integrity, man. And their word means nothing. So for me, what I try to pass on to the kids is that, hold your weight. You tell people you're going to do something, you do it. And if you can't do it, just say, actually, by the way, Pete, not going to be able to do it. I told you I was going to do X, Y, Z. Yep. Can't do it anymore. And that's it. And then, because, it's almost like mistakes. One of the traits that my wife tells me that like that she respects in me, and so I say it because to me, if she says it's something that is of great value to her, I always am like, wow, okay, because she's got a high bar. So, but one of the things was early on, she said, what I like about you is that when you make mistakes, you're like the first one to own up to it. Like, and I said to her, well, early on, I go, well, actually, I realized early on, if I make a mistake and the quicker I admit to it and follow my sword and try to fix it, the less pain everyone will have, including myself. So it is a selfish sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like, in that if you make a mistake, you own up to it, you move on. And I think, like I said, the whole principle of integrity and 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 the whole like being true to what you promise people you're going to do is big, because it doesn't take long. Like, we all have those, like I said, those people in our circles of friends and family where you're like, yeah, Uncle Jim, man, he's just yap. I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And some of the things, sometimes people say things that doesn't even affect you. So they're only like actually making a promise to the world because maybe they're trying to show off, like, oh man, I'm launched this business and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And then like you see them next year and they haven't done anything. And then the following year, nothing. You're like, why does this person make these promises? That doesn't hurt me, but like, I think they're full of shit, because nothing that they ever say comes to fruition. So, and it doesn't hurt me, but it's like, if they can't even hold their promises to themselves, that's definitely not the person I'm going to count on, because probably they would let me down. So I think that's one that has worked out well both ways, because then I try to be mindful of people who are flaky. I just call them flaky. And because I know I can't count on them, So
Why do you think people do that? I mean,
well, I think it kind of gets back to your question about a compliment. Can you take a compliment? I think that some people, they like to make other people happy, on the surface. So I'm going to say these things to pump you up. I'm not going to come through with it. And hopefully that means something to you. But if you psychoanalyze people, as I do, then it's like, oh man, no, not my first rodeo, dude. You're full of shit. Like, forget about it, So I think people really do it for their own good, whether it's a promise to you or a promise to themselves, And then other people, I think, especially if they're saying something to you, like, hey, I have a dream. I have a dream. My dream is to, I don't know, go to, go to Ireland. I want to go to Ireland one day, and I want to go see the countryside. And they keep telling you this, but it never happens. I mean, that's not hurting anybody. It's okay. But I think, like, what I try to do in that situation with people is like, what can I do to help you realize your dream? Because I certainly have had dreams things that I have said and then didn't do. And I feel like I don't feel good about that. If I'm like dreaming about something, I tell people and then it doesn't happen, I'm like, oh man, I got to face them. They're going to ask me about that. Like, didn't you say you were going to do this? Matter of fact, I bought a Harley early last year, and from a friend. And so I didn't tell a lot of people because I knew I wasn't going to do it, which is get my motorcycle license. And the bike's been sitting in the garage here for a year now. And I'm getting my license and taking the classes, because it's been a long time since I've ridden a bike. So I'm getting the classes finally now on December 22nd, I think the 20th through the 22nd. And then I could ride the bike. But I haven't ridden the bike and I haven't told anybody about it. Just like, it's just in my head, right? Like, I don't want to like go tell a bunch of people, like friends, family, oh my God, I got a bike and I'm going to ride it. And then like a year goes by and like, how's that bike doing? I don't know. It's still sitting in the garage. I'm such a procrastinator. I'll feel horrible about myself. So I just didn't tell anybody. So it's funny because like some friends, family who've come over, I didn't even know you had a bike in the garage. Why don't you say anything? So because I'm not ready to ride it yet. And I don't want to ruin this by, because I would have, you have to prioritize in life. You and I talked about that. You're a parent, you've got business, you got stuff to do. That had to be something on the back burner. It was a hobby. But it's not a priority. So you got to pick and choose. Do you want to go fishing? Do you want to play basketball? Do you want to play soccer? What do you want to do? There's only so much time in a day, and I'm a little bit all over the place in that way, right? Like, I want to go do a lot of things, but I realize that a lot of those dreams will not get fulfilled just because there's not enough time in a day, So
I'm just curious. Just take us through the journey. I mean, from really that sort of 11-year-old busboy to the lead generator. What sort of path did you take on the way through there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from the beginning, was the big dream. My mom always said, she still says that to this day, you got to dream big. You got to dream big. Like, that message to me meant a lot, which just meant like, I have to shoot for the stars. And even if I fall short, right, you just have big dreams and aspirations. So I think from an early age of 11 was seeing like, oh my God, look what we are all accomplishing here, because you guys took a chance coming to a foreign country, being treated like an immigrant, which is typical for every immigrant in any country at any point in history. And it's uncomfortable, but they did it for us, for the kids. And then now, as we kind of go, I just thought, man, if we've already done this much, imagine what I could do that, 5, 20, 30, 50 years from now, and imagine how far my kids will be, how further ahead in the race of life, right? Like then they'll be able to help other family members and other people and make this world a better place. So like, that's my goal always. It's like, I'm like, let's just keep climbing that like ladder, for lack of a better word. And it's not about the money. It really isn't, but it's about like the impact that you're making in the lives of people and the community that you live in, because then when you're gone, you're gone. Like, what's your legacy? Like, what did you do? So when I work backwards from 11 to 43, the theme was always the same. Like, you need to always keep pushing yourself more, harder, harder, harder. And just when you accomplished that. Like, for example, I dropped out of college, to run a family business when I was 21. And, like, yes, education was important, but for a lot of different reasons, I had to go help the family. So I did that. But I came in as a young kid with like 40 employees, like, oh, what the hell? I didn't know what the hell I was doing, And when I think back to that, Pete, I'm like, is this like as good as it gets, or should I be complacent? No, I kept pushing myself, I kept pushing myself. And then I even thought back then, I was like, you know what? One day I'll either go back to college, or even one better, I might teach. I don't know in what format, but I think I would like teaching, because I started to come into like my own management style of running a business. And I was like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at this, like helping people, become the best versions of themselves. And I'm like, well, I bet I'd be good at teaching. I'm not sure, if that would ever be a thing, because I'm a college dropout. So probably not. Right. Anyways, Pete, like over the years, I kept doing more and more and more, to the point where, for the last 6 years, I've not only lectured, but I've even taught MBAs at universities, which if you would have told me like, hey man, like you're a college dropout and one day you're going to teach MBAs, I would have told you like, that's pretty impossible, man. You're probably going to have to go back to school, get your MBA first. But I didn't have to do that, because my credentials was the level of success that I've had in business. That is my proof that I know how to produce success, and of course, along the way, there was a lot of failures. There still is. That's a constant. I'm okay with that. That's just part of the journey as an entrepreneur. But I think going back to your original question of, 11 to this where I'm at now, was just always push myself further. And every time I was able to get to that peak, that I thought was probably not possible. I mean, I'm going to shoot for that, but I'm not sure if that's possible. Then I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, let's go a step further and a step further. And I think that's when I talk to people in business, people who have accomplished like gigantic things, whatever it is, whether it's business, entertainment, athletes, like, I'm like, I bet they had the same thought. Like, I can push myself to the point where the person next to me might not be willing to put in as much work as you. And that's going to be the difference maker. And I think in business, it's a lot that way. When somebody says, well, how'd you get that account? It's like, I didn't go to sleep until like 3 a.m. My competitor probably went to bed at midnight. That's how I think. So part of dreaming big is also following it up with the work. And that sort of a theme is a theme that I've threaded throughout from my 11-year-old busboy self to my, self-proclaimed serial entrepreneur now. Yeah, I mean, just, of course, taking risks was always a part of it. I always knew that because I saw it with family. Lots of people fail. And I'm pretty sure I'll still have a bunch of failures that will come my way. But, I try not to repeat the mistakes, which is hard to do. It really is hard to do.
Mm. It's always, but that's it, right? I mean, is that not the trait of an entrepreneur? It's saying, yeah, they take the knockdown and sort of dust themselves up and get on again. It's not a case of having to. It's yeah, I get to try again. I get to do it slightly differently. I get to learn the lesson from the last time and tweak the formula, right? So is that a key of an entrepreneur?
It is. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you have to be for like coming from me, who I started really after high school, just doing sales, sales, sales. It was very apparent to me that like, oh my God, sales. Geez, man, it's like 6, 7 out of every interaction, it's 6, 7 out of 10 interactions. So, the majority of my interactions with people, and then no, 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 thank you. No, I don't want it. Get out of my face. I'm not interested. And then it was like, oh, now I got to figure out how to like get them to not say no and allow me to spend enough time with them. And I think that for me, that's what it was. So when I talk to young first stage entrepreneurs, they're like, what trait do you think I should have? I'm like, sales, man. Like if you go out and sell your own product, even if you're a tech guy who you're like, that's not me. I'm like, I don't care. Go sell your product. Because if you can compel people to buy your product as an entrepreneur, you'll get comfortable with the idea of things not going your way. And then you look around, you have a cup of coffee or maybe a whiskey, and then you say, okay, switch gears. Let's go. Boom. Come on. And you keep moving forward. You don't keep looking back at your failures. I mean, of course you learn from it. Don't get me wrong. I think that there's like a good lesson to always reflect back on that pain. And I think that's sort of what writing for me. When I write, I like reflect on many of my stories of failures. And it's really refreshing because then you kind of break it down into pieces. Like, why did it fail? And there's always a reason why it failed. And sometimes this is just my thinking. Sometimes it's just my energy wasn't in the right place. And whether somebody believes that that's bullshit or not, I feel that way. Sometimes if the mindset wasn't there to begin with, that energy that I'm putting out, it just doesn't work. And then other times when you have, even if you had less strategy and consciousness, but your whole energy was in the right place, things just seem to work better, and so I mean, I'm also a big believer of luck. I do think that there's a good part of what I do. Some of it is art, some of it is science, but some of it is just luck, man. Right place, right time. And whether I ask the universe for it or not, I'm not sure. I don't have a crystal ball, but sometimes you're just like, holy shit, I got lucky with that. Because it wasn't like that wasn't a genius move, but how did that turn out so good? Right. And then other times you're like, oh man, I put so much work into that and it still didn't turn out well. Why not? I don't know. They call it bad luck then.
Does fate come into it for you, or is it just pure luck?
Oh man, that's a good one. I mean, I struggle with that idea of fate, because I with my wife, I seem to think that like, yeah, it was fate that brought us together. She was born in Maryland, came down to Florida, and I was born in Brazil, came to Florida. Like, they're like, oh, how did that all work? It had to be fate. Like there had to be a bigger machine at work here, right? Whether you say it's God or just something. I don't know, because I think that mostly I definitely have had enough, sad situations, bad things happen in my life, whether it was my own doing or by accident, where I was like, whoa, hell, man, that wasn't fate. Like that, how's that meant to be? I mean, we lost our first child, at pretty much at birth. He was a stillbirth, Kyle. So we would have had 5 kids. But my wife was, a week from her due date, and his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, and they didn't have enough time to save him. And so when I think about that, I'm like, fate? That's bullshit. Like what kind of God does that, right? So then you get into this idea of like when you start to think about your beliefs, and it really tests you, is I guess the point. And so I've had enough things. My dad passed away at at the age of 61. Things didn't work out there either. And I thought the prayer and like all the stuff that we were asking the universe for, right? And then when it would really annoy me when people say, well, that's fate. That's just the way it's meant to be. I'm like, the next person that tells me it happened for a reason, I kick you in your shit. Like that's bullshit. It was meant to be. Like what, somebody loses their baby? That's meant to be. Why? I don't have an explanation. So it's bullshit. Like you don't have a good explanation. You know what I mean? So I think the idea of fate is that I think I have to create some luck. So yes, I have to study hard to understand the science of whatever I'm doing. That's proof. I have to do the art. That's the creativity. I have to be like, a tinkerer, willing to test things. And then I have to create my luck, man. Create my luck, I think, is a lot of things that people don't think about. Like, let's say you're a business and you're about to go out of business because, I don't know, it's just not doing well and finances are bad. Well, like, and you say, well, I tried everything. And you're like, well, how many people did you go out, or banks did you go out and ask for a loan? They say like 5 or 10. If I were in that situation again, which I was in 2008, we were millions of dollars in debt, from the economy tanked here. I mean, it was mainly the US, a little bit globally, but mainly here. I was holding on real estate. I had, a construction company. Everything was going bad. And guess what, Pete? If I wanted it, if I had it in me to make it like successful again, or get through those following years, because it would be tough for everyone, 2008, 2009, 2010, about 3 years here in America, a lot of businesses were like, took a while, that recession. But I didn't have it in me, in my heart. That's what, right around the time, 2009, when we lost our son, I didn't care about business, man. So, you could say like, well, it was fate that then brought you to this other business that then made you even more successful than the first and second one. I'm like, man, yeah, but there's a lot of things that happened in my life that were very painful. And I just don't feel like that was fate. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming God either. I'm not blaming the doctor. I'm just saying it was an accident. It was unfortunate. And sometimes I think that's, as human beings, all of us, we want an answer. So you must have a response. Well, this is why it happened. And for me, I just feel like sometimes, like, actually, there was no reason. And then on the flip side, when sometimes I have things happen that I'm like, what the hell? I had little to do with that success. That's just luck. Can't explain it other than if I flip a coin, heads or tails. You control that? You don't control that. You don't control where the coin lands. I mean, just using it as a metaphor. I mean, you don't get too analytical. I probably talked to some guys who are like, well, if the wind, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, just take the metaphor, man. So
yeah, it's hard to know. What's your learning style there, Alex? I mean, it sounds like you're very much a man that sort of immerses himself into it and learns on the fly. Is that a fair statement?
yeah, it is. But I mean, I've always been really obsessed with information of all kinds. So I wouldn't say I'm a history buff or this guru or that. I love to read. I love to listen to the podcast. I love to watch tutorials. And if I don't know about a subject matter, I'm like, let's go get a book and learn about it right now. So that, I think, is the lifelong learner in me, which I didn't think I was that early on. I thought I was more of a renegade. Like I just do it my way. But as it turns out, I'm not. I'm actually pretty much like most people. Like I want to learn more because it gives me joy to open my mind to things that I never thought were possible. You know, you start reading history and learning about cultures and things. You're like, what? How did I? And I still listen, homeschooling our kids. I go through this every day, Pete. Something that maybe I was never presented to in school. And I'm like, what? How did I not know this? I've gone my whole life and I didn't know about this. And I'm, one of my kids at elementary, the other one's in middle school. How did I not know this? So I feel like that's actually my challenge. And I think for most people who love to learn is finding time to learn more about everything. It's like, oh my God, it's a lot of fun. And I think for business, specifically about business, almost all my books here are nonfiction. They are strategy, growth, self everything about just the world, behaviors. And maybe there's one or two that I can look at on this shelf that's nonfiction, fiction. Whereas my wife and my son, they love fiction. They love the novels, the stories. My son loves Harry Potter and all of that. And just so for me, I was never into that, but I do dig it in the sense that since it's not my jam, if they're learning about something, I'll say, well, what's that about? Tell me about the character. What was the conflict? Like, even though it's not my thing, I could see why people enjoy that. It's like a getaway, right? Fiction, it's like a getaway from your real life. Whereas I more enjoy the real stuff that most people are like, really? You do that all day and you got to do that at night on the weekend too? What's the matter with you? I don't know. It just gets me going. So I could read a biography or listen to a podcast like with, what's his name? Kai, no, it's not Kai Rizdal. I can't remember. It's How I Built This. And, he's got the stories of all these conglomerates, Fortune 500 brands and their founders. And it's this pretty long podcast too. I mean, usually it's like 70 to 90 minutes, but he gets into like why they did, like founders of like every company you could imagine. And, coincidentally, I'll listen to the podcast, then I got to go read their biography or memoir or something like that. But I'm more connected to the non-fictional stories and books than the fictional ones.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I don't know, could you look at look at a person's or a man's library and you'll see the man that you're going to see, right? I think it's telling, right?
It is. And to a certain extent, Pete, I a little bit of me wishes that I were more the other way, because I'm like, the way I see my wife and son, like how they get lost in these like fictional stories. I'm like, man, that's cool, man. I wish I wish it was the way I felt about those stories, because, I want to be able to connect with people that way. And so when people start talking about these, again, fictional books, it's just not my jam. But I'm also the guy that, like, in high school, middle school, and even in college, like, you go watch a movie with, and I'm like I'm a really hard critic. Say hard by hard, I mean like not good. And my friends would be like, man, what's the matter with you, man? Every time we come out of a movie, you always have something bad to say about it. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, that couldn't have happened. This couldn't have happened. They're like, yeah, it's a freaking fictional. Like, it's not a real story, Alex. I'm like, yeah, you're not coming to the movies with us, man. You. So it's just funny. It's not my thing.
What's a guilty pleasure for you there, Alex? I mean, take out the guilt if you like. I don't mind.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, what is the guilty pleasure? I mean, I kind of always just go back to trying to spend time doing things that I feel are going to help me grow. So that might be a guilty pleasure, because that while I could convince myself that it helps my family and blah, 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 at the end of the day, whether it's listening to the podcast or getting lost in another, entrepreneur biography, like, it is more about me. and my own growth. So sitting on boards, giving back to the community, mentoring, a lot of those things, even though it benefits other people, ultimately it's satisfying to me, right? Yeah, I love to drink a beer and a good vodka. I mean, but that's as guilty as it gets. The rest is all with the kids, man. You know, the traveling, love to travel. I would say we travel probably more than we should. But it's good. It's good for the mind. The kids discover new places, meet new people, and certainly since COVID, having the RV and going on those trips has helped us tremendously. Actually, we just booked another one today. We booked one for first week of January. We're going to be down in the Everglades, the southernmost part of the U.S., Florida, not Key West, but Everglades. I mean, you're 50 miles from cell phone reception, man. I'm telling you. You got alligators, you got dolphins on this side here in the bay, you've got sharks, you've got deer, bobcats, just the wildlife, you know? So that's a guilty pleasure because again, I am sure if you speak to some of my, business colleagues, they're like, man, we could do so much more with the business. And if you just worked more, and I'm like, I know how to work hard, but I play hard too. So I think that might be the guilty pleasure there. And I am careful, right, Pete? I am careful not to do it more than I think I can, because I always want to be mindful that the sort of the opportunity and the place that I'm at, I have to be protective of it. Because if I squander it, if I push too much, it may all go away, and I definitely, I'm not looking forward to any, oh my God, you'd have to start over. I did that in 08 and 09 after, building a certain level of comfort and lifestyle and attaining certain wealth, like all went away. It was like reset, start over. It was like, holy crap, man, that's way too hard. I don't want to do that. So I do have to be careful with that. So I always tell my wife when we're booking these trips, I'm like, wait a minute, we got to make sure we cross all our T's, dot the I's, make sure everything aligns well, because the last thing I want to do is screw all this up and then be like, okay, let's, start over with 4 kids, more or less. And I'm not doing that. So gotta be mindful. Just, there's definitely strategy there too. So look, this week, typically we put the kids to bed, 8:30, 9 o'clock, they're in bed. And then my wife will come down and we'll either binge watch something on Netflix or sit and read a book. But this week, I got so many things that I got to get done for this last quarter here and get ready for 2022. So I said this week, we can't even hang out at night. Like, so she's like, oh man, and she loves to read her books too. And she helps with other stuff with the business. So she's busy herself, but that's usually when my mom says like, you guys go on like a date every night. I'm like, yeah, this week is going to be one of those that coming back from Thanksgiving break, I'm like, I got to put my head down and I'm not going to bed until at least midnight, 1 o'clock, getting up at 5, 6 o'clock, do it over again. And then, so that's what I tell people. I say, it's not glamorous because there's nobody pushing me to do that. I got to want that, and it does. And it's not an imposition. Like, I don't feel like, oh my God, it's so much work. No, man, I'm excited to do it, So, yeah, if you truly enjoy what you're doing, then it really, it doesn't feel like work, which is a problem sometimes. Like, it could be a problem. You enjoy it, so you end up doing it 7 days a week. And so it's good. I always have my wife to slow me down and say, hey, psst, make sure we're doing, going out for the bike rides with the kids and just doing all the other stuff. So it's working right now, and I'm definitely happy, but mindful that if you don't protect it, it can go away.
I mean, if there was say, I don't know, 5 principles to live by, what would they be for you?
5 principles to live by. So definitely Give to others, right? That's everybody, your kids, you just give. So give, because I'm definitely a believer in that if you give, it comes back around. I think that's just the laws of the world, of how things work. So I think give, dream big, gotta dream big. Don't fear anything, like nothing, like nothing. Like, I don't care what, if you screwed up on the biggest deal on your client's account or whatever, pick up the phone and say, hey, I screwed up, move on, let's go. Mistake. I'm not going to like dwell on a mistake. I'm certainly not going to be afraid of anything like that. Right. So I think like that is a good, for me, has been something to that I've used that has really helped me. I think I was mentioning it to you earlier. So that definitely that. So so Ted, so don't fear anything, except that things are not always going to go according to plan, which I tell you what, during COVID, I'm one of those people who I have a bunch of planners here, planners there, the whiteboards, all kinds of stuff. Literally since COVID, I just do stuff. Yeah, sure, I have things on the calendar, but I'm not living by my little well-planned mind map and, here's what's going to happen this year, that year. Like, that all went out the window. And the sooner I accepted the fact that shit is not going to go according to plan, it's just like this pressure came off of me. So just, again, accept that things are not going to go according to plan, which includes some failures, and that's okay. And last but not least, like, have fun with it. Like I said, anytime I find myself not having fun, actually fun doing what I'm doing, whether it's homeschooling the kids or whatever, or in the case of fixing my pool pump, which sounded like fun. So I sound like fun. Like, let me go buy the part, go on YouTube, and then it got complicated. And I was like, okay, I just need a professional to do it, because I'm a typical dad in that way. Like, I want to fix stuff, but then whether it's work or anything else, if it doesn't become fun, what the hell are you doing it for? You got to have fun doing it, man. So I think that takes a lot of pressure away. And when you walk away from, and sometimes it could be cheesy. Like, I talk with clients when we do this session that is design thinking, discover, ideate is what we call it. It sounds like a little bit, not, some clients are like, yeah, I don't need to do that. It's like, I'm like, yeah, but that's the whole point. Like, some of these exercises sounds like something that you use for high school kids, but it's to get you out of your like business zone. And it's meant to make you have fun, because if you have fun, then I have you engaged. And if I have you engaged, it's like your brain is like producing these little creativity, cells, and the outcome is always better when you're having fun. So yeah, I think those are 5 that come to mind. I know there's a bunch more, but definitely 5 that I think has served me well.
I love it. Yeah, it's because they're good, strong principles, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, if you were to try and summarize your fire in the belly in 1 or 2 words, what would they be, Alex?
So I'm making a change in this world. That's number 1. Like, the fire in my belly, when I know I'm doing things that is making an impact in people's lives, I know when I'm doing it, because when it's surface, it doesn't feel like that, right? And that for me gives me great joy. And it's bigger than me. It's just right. So that's one. And I think the second one is really to just stick with it. Whatever it is that you do, you got to stick with it. That's the other thing I don't think we touched on in this whole podcast, was that rare, like, yes, in the rare occasion, something happens by luck, but rarely did I get any substantial success if if I didn't put in all that hard work. So you yourself know, like all of us know when you're really working hard, because I know when I'm not. I definitely know when I'm just, BSing through the day, and then the day ends and I'm like, what the hell did I do today? That still happens, right? And then I have to check myself and be like, hold on a second, man. And you could see that it just wasn't, I didn't lead my day with all that passion and that fire, for whatever reason. Maybe I drank too much the night before and, wasted my brain cells on some Netflix special. I don't know. So I think that, is you got to check yourself, because if not, you go too many days without living with that purpose. You'll find yourself with things that aren't rewarding, so like I said, just make sure that you are working hard. And yeah, man, like I said, it's like protecting the things that you build. Like all of us here every day, we wake up, we go, you're building, they're building blocks. And I definitely know when I'm not, and I don't have that fire in the belly. So yeah, I think those would be the two.
Just tell me, I mean, you have your own podcast, so just give us an overview. I mean, tell us what you do there, and how you're of service, and how people can benefit from it.
Yeah, Pete. Well, first and foremost, I want to really thank you for having me here. I think your questions, I can say so to your usual listeners, I'm sure they listen to you for a reason. This was a very enlightening conversation, very thoughtful. I think your questions were super, super thoughtful. And like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, not only with you, with your audience, and just share my story. I'm just another human being, and so, but yeah, where you could find me is on either LinkedIn, my website. You can go to dadpreneur.co. I've got the podcast. My podcast is way shorter than yours and probably not as thoughtful, because I'm more about the how to, but I'm always in awe of these types of podcasts, where you really get in deep. So good job, man. I know it's a lot of work, takes a lot of time away from everything that you want to do in your life. So this is great, man. It's been a really great, hour and a half with you here. So appreciate it.
Listen, I appreciate it. I mean, it's always a pleasure when people share and take the time to do that. It's a huge thing. Is there a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, just I think right now in this world, we're in need of more people who are willing to give. That's all, man. Just, if you're in a position to give whatever. It doesn't have to be money. It could be volunteering at your church or a nonprofit. Like, don't be so judgmental, don't have some empathy, and just, whether it's in business or in your personal life, like, you don't know what happened in someone's life that day, why they're acting a certain way. Don't be so quick to judge them. They need help. Why do they need help? What are you, like a socialist? Like, come on, man. Not everybody is born with the same privileges. So I'd say, like, right now in this world, what we're in need of is people who are less judgmental and just willing to give, and not be so like, well, but where does the money go? And how does it, like, listen, are you in a position to give? Just freaking give, man. Stop trying to like control everything that happens. And I think that if we had a 10% jump in giving of all kinds, imagine how much happier this world would be, because there's certainly a lot of people in need right now. Right, Pete?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, earth-shattering gifts and all the rest. It can just be sometimes a simple bet goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I mean, I wish you all the best. And listen, I know you're going to do amazing things. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the time today. And listen, we appreciate all you're doing. So keep going. Thank you.
My pleasure.